Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another rowing chat. I'm Rebecca Caro, and I'm very excited that today I've got a superb guest who's actually a returnee. But before we get on to that, I'd just like to put in a word for our amazing sponsors. First up, the Speedcoach Summer Regatta Series. NK now offers on-the-water racing using a Speedcoach Summer Regatta Series. This allows you to compete against rowers from all over the world, just from wherever you are training. There are showcase events named for and sponsored by regattas that obviously are not happening in real life this summer, giving you the chance to imagine yourself lining up in Philadelphia on a steamy July day or pushing past the barrier at Henley-upon-Thames in England. To participate in the series, you just need the following equipment: a single scull and some oars. There are no team boats for now. The Speedcoach GPS Model 2 with the training pack software. You need to upgrade your Speedcoach to the training pack. It's very easy off their website. And to be a registered individual on the Link Logbook app. What you have to do is row the defined distance within the regatta timeframe on any body of water in the world. Use the Speedcoach programmable workouts to make sure you program the exact distance of the race that you choose. Then upload your session to the Link Logbook account. Row as many pieces as you want. Your fastest qualifying piece will be used for the leaderboard. And then join the regatta. You can join and leave the regatta at any time before the event ends. You can even join before the event begins, so you're ready when the race window opens. Full details are on the Rowing Chat sponsors page, rowing.chat/sponsor. Secondly, we're still working on the rowing products directory. We want to help all rowing retailers recover as quickly as possible after lockdown and COVID-19 passes. And so we're building a giant rowing directory page. Send me your favorite rowing product and their website link, and we'll contact the firm for permission to add it to the page. Our goal is to have the page live by the end of this month. Contact us via rowing.chat and let us all pull together and support the businesses that make rowing possible. Now, today I'm joined by Tara Morgan, who is a returning guest. Tara, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you do.
Yeah, so I currently live on Vashon Island in Washington State. And as you can see, I live in a very small cottage. This is my little backyard cottage here on the island. It's paradise. And we actually have a very competitive and well-known rowing team here, which was a big reason to move here, both small town and great rowing. I coach Learn to Row for adults, but I think I'm most known for being the founder of the Seize the Oar Foundation, which was founded in 2013. Myself, I became a rower in 1986, living in East Tennessee in Oak Ridge, big rowing community, believe it or not, in the South, the American South there. And have been rowing ever since. I'm a sweeper by trade, but now I've been learning the beauty of the single, which I think you have more experience in than I do. But just what we're going to talk about today is inclusion and what Seize the Oar Foundation is trying to accomplish with everything that's happening with both COVID, Black Lives Matter, and just where we are at in the rowing community and the atmosphere right now, where we can help out. So Seize the Oar is known for adaptive rowing and para rowing, as it's more commonly called. We focus on 3 areas. We are committed to adaptive team training. So we have competitive teams that we train. We also do outreach, and I'm so sad to see in my calendar all of our outreach events just cancel for this year. But those are all long-standing relationships that we will reboot or reinvent in this new era. And then our last thing that we're doing that we're going to talk a lot about today is thought leadership. So that's what we're doing.
That is fantastic. Now, what you will, listeners, have realized from that long list of things that Tara's working on is that this lady is one major innovator. She and I first got together when she was just kicking off the Seize the Oar project, and we were talking about her work with coaching older masters. And specifically at that time, we were talking about people who were in their 70s and their 80s. And Tara is just the best person for keeping her eyes and ears open and seeing a need, and then helping the rowing world to follow that need, but also collaboratively to formulate a solution or some best practices. So I'm delighted to hear what you're working on now. So let's kick off talking about your para rowing global meetups. What are these?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, there's a lot of challenges with getting back on the water. And I think in the para rowing world, those challenges extend a bit wider than your average masters. I think we're challenged with mostly athlete to coach proximity issues. Also, while we don't like to assume that people with disabilities are more vulnerable to COVID, there definitely is more of a red flag. There's more attention paid, I think, to the details in the para community. So I think what was happening at the time when we started these in March was that no para programs were on the water, at least not publicly. And I began to wonder here at Seize the Oar, how are we going to get back on the water and when? And looking at the U.S. rowing, return to rowing guidelines, those came out way later than the Australian ones did, and the Canadian ones and the British ones. And the Canadians and the Brits and the Aussies, we often look to first for guidance before US rowing, only because in this case, especially, those countries were ahead of us in terms of success in slowing the pandemic. So we were looking at Australia, especially, they were a few weeks ahead of us in terms of getting back on the water. So I reached out to Liam James from Balmain Para Rowing, and his mother and I are all in contact, and he's on the board of Rowing New South Wales, to connect about what were the guidelines being recommended for para. Same with Canada, with Rowing British Columbia. Our contact there is Martin George. He's the para head of para for Rowing British Columbia, which is the westernmost side of Canada, if you're not familiar. And we've long worked with Martin as a resource. So we realized that there were a lot of differing opinions and strategies, and some people were just saying absolutely not. But on the other hand, some clubs who had para were saying, unintentionally being gatekeepers and saying, okay, you get to go on the water, but you can't. And we don't want that either, right? Because there's a concept of essential eligibility requirements, EEC. This is something that was introduced to me. It's not specific to rowing. It's actually used in the occupational health world and the healthcare field. And what it does is it allows you to have a process where you decide, here's the essential eligibility requirements or criteria, EEC, to go on the water. At Seize the Oar, we decided that if everybody can't row, no one rows. And so we are also in the situation where we are a tenant inside of a boathouse. So we have to do what that boathouse is doing.
Yeah, that's right.
And the other layer to that is that boathouse is on parks property, which is municipal property. So we have to follow what that guideline is. So kind of this trickle-down effect. And we realized that there was a lot of knowledge out there, and there was a lot of people at different stages. Like, for instance, in Sarasota, Florida, Betsy Irwin Mitchell's para rowing program never stopped rowing. They just were in singles. They had the capacity. They had the willing volunteers, or they had rowers who didn't need as much proximal assistance. At Seize the Oar, we're not lifting people or actually handling humans, but you do have to reach across and help with a strap or get their water bottle or move their wheelchair. So there is a lot of touching of stuff. Then not having clear expectations of how the boathouse is being sanitized. Or could we have exclusive use of the boathouse when we were there to preserve the sanitation? All of these questions, lots and lots and lots of questions. So I decided to invite a bunch of my colleagues, some of whom I've never met before, and I just started DMing and emailing, and I found lists from the past, lists from now, email lists, people I just knew off of Facebook groups. And at the first meetup, we had 70 people come.
Wow.
And they were from Great Britain's para rowing team. They were from Kenya. They were from South Africa. They were from Germany. They were from Australia. Liam James from Rowing New South Wales was one of our speakers. And so what we did was we ended up doing 5 of these meetups, and the response was robust the entire time. And we ended up covering issues like Black Lives Matter and like how is your boathouse inclusive, how to talk about it. But the best part about these meetups was the breakout sessions. People met rowers, board members, founders, coaches, well-meaning volunteers, parents, caregivers, physical therapists, recreational therapists, all mixed in, teachers, special education people. All these people showed up. Related organizations, adaptive sport organizations would come. And in these breakout sessions, we would have them like go to work. It wasn't a networking thing. It was actually work sessions. And out of that came some really amazing knowledge. And all of those meetups are on our website. You can watch for free all of the meetups edited down so that they're, a manageable chunk. And because they're sometimes visual and not visual, it's actually a good thing to listen to as a podcast. You can walk and listen to it as well. All of the resources that were shared, from return to row guidelines to slides to companion videos, all of that plus more resources is all on our website. We just managed to create a community of about 150 para fans and supporters and participants. So that's it was very exciting. It was very cool.
What a great achievement. And have you got any
Who knew?
more planned? Have you got more planned for the future?
Well, we reached a point where, and I talked about this before we went on the air, I have a lot of time on my hands. These ended up being, I think, about comparable to what you do with finding guests, prepping, doing presentations, getting media together, advertising, promotion, registration management, just keep going down the line, and then all of the recap. And I love doing this work. It turns out,
Who knew?
Well, I do like organizing events, but I think we saw the registrations start to kind of go down as clubs started to go back to rowing. So we thought we'd cut our losses and we didn't have any losses, actually. It was really popular and really fun. But we just thought, let's leave them wanting more. People are going to come back. And lucky for us, we got to discuss hard things and not just how-tos and things. We talked about different perspectives. And the last meetup, I think, was probably one of my favorites, was moderated by Denise Aquino, who I know you've interviewed with Rowing in Color podcast. And she's a fantastic moderator, by the way. She's very organized. And we had ask the elite coach, ask the para rower, ask the veteran, ask the board member, and ask the founder. And it was all pre-done questions, not a free-for-all by any means. And what I thought was so great about it was very well organized. It wasn't a free-for-all. That's always better in rowing, right? But that we covered a lot of unknown territory and sort of sticky territory. And it was great. And it was an all-women panel, not on purpose, but just because they're all awesome.
And you can find all of that resource material that Tara mentioned at seizetheoar.com. Now, as a result of that, you're now on to organising your next thing, which you tell me is an inclusive coaching conference. Now, I'm guessing this is rowing specific.
Yes, yeah. So one of the things that we meaning Seize the Oar Foundation, have had on our radar to do. And then when COVID came, it really became an issue of interest to us. Was we feel like the inclusive coaching toolkit is something that needs to be broadened and expanded, and that there are a lot of coaches who are kind of thrown in their first few days. I'm sure you've had one of those coaches who barely knew how to drive the launch or open the boathouse, and just, it would be, the attitude is like, you'll figure it out. You're smart. You're young, you know, which isn't the best way to do it. And like, we just realized that we could actually put together a pretty dynamic conference about this. We originally did not expect it to be about anything more than para inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, it has really expanded. People are very interested in a lot of different topics. Now, I will say that we are not the be all end all. I know that inclusion in rowing is a hot topic this year. It's why we want to talk to Rowing Australia, Rowing New South Wales, Rowing Canada, British Rowing. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. Like, people are doing great inclusion work that's just standard. Look at Fulham Reach in Great Britain, the Boats Not Bars program, right? There's a prison program. There's stuff going on. We are not the definitive resource. However, we can bring together all the cool people and great work that's being done. And that's what we want to do. So if you're out there and you have a great inclusion tip or concept or dream or vision or project or program in place, we'd love to hear about it. Like, what's really working? And we want to hear about it at the conference. So you can contact us through our website. On the homepage right now, we actually have a submit your idea section. So some of the things I'm really excited about for the conference are going to be, yes, of course, we're going to talk about para and how to make your boathouse, how to assess your boathouse to make sure you're building itself. Like, who are you best suited to serve, right? Doesn't have to be every type of ability, but you can do better. Pretty sure everybody could do better. And we're going to help you figure out what your boathouse looks like and what to look for. Some of the other ones I'm really excited about are talking about rows before hose is the name of the session. And it's really, that's a cute name that has a lot of harsh undertone to it.
So just pause there a moment. For non-North Americans, what is the background to rows before hose? Because I don't know the phrase.
So rows before hose is actually an offshoot of another phrase that's bros before hose, which really means pick your male brethren over girls, over a girlfriend. Your boys win over your girlfriend. So the hoe is the girl. So there's actually a rowing meme, a rowing site called Rows Before Hose. And we're just kind of borrowing that phrase. I'm sure that they're funny and cute folks who run that. I'm not making any judgments about that particular Instagram or hashtag. But we know the origin of that phrase. And this is a touchy subject. Everybody gets squeamish about it. And it's about toxic masculinity at boathouses. And we're going to see it from all angles. We're going to have male coaches talk about their experiences with toxic masculinity. You know, just anybody who has a story, and it's meant to be a resource session, not a support group, but a resource session.
Good point. So,
yeah, and I think that's an important distinction. It's out there. It happens. We've all experienced it in some way. I know I have. And in my history as a rower and as a coach. But I think it's a topic that makes a lot of people squeamish. So we're just going to talk about it. I mean, why not? People can have their opinions. But so that's really interesting to me and to a lot of people. And then the last one I want to highlight actually two more I want to highlight. In this pandemic, there seems to be a lot of coaches who are being furloughed. And because of that furloughing, they may never return to coaching. They may never go back to those boathouses. Those boathouses may have to keep their staff really small. Like Row New York has tightened their belt. A lot of the big organizations have tightened their belt. And really concerned with or interested in that institutional knowledge being lost. Where can we preserve that? Can we document that somehow? So we've invited, and we are inviting, some of the longest time coaches that we can find who are in long-standing programs, just to talk about the legacy that they're leaving, and to talk about the legacy that their boathouse has. And the last one I wanted to mention is called Know Where You Row. And this is an exercise in researching the indigenous geography of where your boathouse is and what the body of water is on which you row. What's the indigenous history of the land where your boathouse is? Who was there before settlers came? What was that body of water called? How can you honor that? Can you put up a sign? Can you educate every rower that comes to the boathouse and says, you are actually on the stolen land of XXX, whatever it is? Or how else can you honor that? We don't hear much about Native American rowing teams. There is one called the Chargers in upstate New York. That's the Onondaga tribe that we'll be talking to and trying to get a representative from. But we're also trying to find an indigenous geography expert who would be able to lead us. So if anybody knows anybody, let us know. We are hot on the trail.
I'm a geographer, not an indigenous geographer, but that was my university topic.
Oh, perfect.
And
yeah.
The piece of water we row on is a flooded volcano. So it was a volcano that basically blew itself up back in prehistory, and it naturally fills with water that just runs off the land nearby. But it was part of indigenous Maori-owned land in the past, and it's actually now a park. So it's a public access area for all sorts of water-based activities.
Fantastic. Well, there's definitely a huge water and water sport history in a lot of the Native American tribes with canoeing and outrigging, especially like in Hawaii. There's an outrigging community and paddling. So we know that this sport, our sport of rowing, translates. But I just think that and a lot of people have asked me, where are we, right? Where a place might have been settled isn't the beginning of that place. And it's just about acknowledging that history. Like, do you know where you row?
Yeah. And of course,
so those are some of the sessions. Yeah.
18th and 19th of September are the dates for the event. Go to seizetheoar.com. All the details you need are on the homepage.
Yeah, and if people, like I said, have ideas, what the theme of the conference is, your inclusive coaching toolkit. And it's really intended for coaches to be, future coaches, board members, volunteers. Of course, it's virtual conference. We're not going to be joining in person. When this was originally scheduled, we did have it in person in Seattle and having a practicum with the Northwest Blind Athletes Association, where we would actually all be in launch boats coaching blind athletes in eights.
Wow.
So we want to sort of try to figure out how to simulate that type of coaching exercise, but over a couple of days with speakers. And we want to encourage a lot of conversation type panels rather than a talk at you type of atmosphere. So and it'll be a sliding scale fee. Unfortunately, we can't offer it for free, but we do have some expenses associated with it. We're working with Rachel Friedman from Row Source and from Sport Graphics as our designer. She's a great collaborator, and we do have a few expenses with it. And we also feel like it's important to pay the speakers. So even if it's a nominal amount, we will be trying to pay every single participant a very, obviously a very tiny gratuity even, but we really feel like a lot of people are getting asked to speak right now because it is a virtual conference environment and it seems like it's easy, but the preparation is the same as if I was getting on an airplane and going to a conference. So I don't want to assume anything. And some people were giving the option, or everybody were giving the option, either we pay you a nominal fee or we make a donation in your name to an organization that means something to you. So if you want to give it to Black Lives Matter or Rowing in Color podcast, or Erg Ed, the erging program, or whatever. And it's global. So we're welcoming all of our coaches and rowers. We've had some fans from Kenya, South Africa, like I said, and word has gotten out. So hopefully we'll have not only speakers from those places, but also participants. So we're excited.
Fantastic. And as if you didn't have enough going on, you're also working on a coaching certification for adaptive rowing. Why is this needed, Tara?
So when I first started as an adaptive rowing coach, the resources for me were the Guide to Adaptive Rowing from British Rowing, a bit from US Rowing. They have a more comprehensive guide now, but also this friends that we've made in Rowing Canada. But I'm much more of a hands-on visual learner, and reading flat material and then taking that to a boathouse with a human being who is very different from these guidelines. What we're trying to do is keep the sport going, because we see the fallout. We see that coaches don't last, or programs don't last. And the most successful programs are the ones that really allow for a collaborative environment, rather than having it be totally structured and everything. Every rower is so different. The other reason that we see it being necessary is because so many adaptive programs are run by volunteers. Mm-hmm. And the investment level, I think, would be higher if they had a certification, and the confidence level. What we're trying to do is build coach confidence. And so this program is really intended for programs that already exist, and that well-intentioned volunteer or that parent who is a master's rower but wants to help out, or the coach who spends 90% of their time coaching juniors and then hops into the adaptive world for 10% of their time, which is a lot of clubs where they're juggling.
Yeah.
Especially now with staff. And the thing is that a para rower can smell a not confident coach a mile away. Like they can sniff that out. And it's a skill to translate what you know of rowing as a non-disabled person into para. So I know I went through that process where I had to reinvent, like, what does a stroke look like for someone only using their arms and shoulders? How is that effective and powerful? And how am I not injuring that person? And how am I challenging them enough and not going the other way and making it not hard enough? And so we're looking to train people and make sure that the coaching pipeline is expanded to include more people, including the volunteer, right, who just needs a little bit more confidence and a little bit more tools. But also established coaches like myself would be able to learn from this and go, oh, that kind of fills in this blank, or this, ooh, I hadn't thought about that. We're working with Blaze Sports, which is an adaptive rowing or an adaptive sport umbrella organization in Atlanta here in the US. And my coaching staff and I at Seize the Oar, we took they have a program called the CARS, Certified Adaptive Recreation Sport Specialist Certification. And we took it just to see what it was. And we took it, and all three of us did it on Zoom together at the same time. We went module by module together, and we would hit pause. It was all, we were like, okay, we like this layout. We like this. We wouldn't include this. Oh, that reminds me we should do this. And we are stoked to get started to make a multimedia video, worksheets, everything. We just think there's a real need for it. A lot of people here in the US go through US Rowing Level 1 and Level 2 coaching certification, where there is mention of para, but ask any para coach in this country and they will say, we would love more data, more information, more networking, and just to have those conversations. So that was the reason for the meetup. But this coaching certification has actually been in process since last year. So we're really stoked about it. And again, it's not going to be the be all end all, but we are looking for input from existing para coaching certifications, like at Rowing Canada. They have a workshop that they do. We want to be able to reference programs that already exist, but also put our flavor on it. And our flavor at Seize the Oar is, sure, why not? Let's try it. We're game. A new rower shows up and we're like, okay, what do you think? We really collaborate with our rowers. And there's a lot of para programs, I think, that feel a lot of pressure to have it all figured out before they even arrive at the boathouse. And we want to teach how to be collaborative, but still maintain credibility and authority and create trust. There's a big issue, in rowing in general, not even just para rowing, but in general, when you walk into a boathouse and you feel like the coach doesn't really understand you or what you need. So that's inclusion. And so it's a nice segue of activities for us, in this time of COVID, when we are not on the water, yet we have all this knowledge to share and to collaborate and energy to collaborate. So that's what we're doing.
And when will this be ready?
So there's a survey, a needs assessment survey, that we will be sending out in the next week or so. And if anyone out there would like to get this survey and be included in our overlook around the world, just let us know. Just hit us up on the website. Once this needs assessment is done, we're trying to get a handle on how much video we want to shoot, how much other stuff we want to shoot. We're hoping that in our hemisphere's winter time, when people will be doing a lot more studying and certification, it'll be ready to go. So by the beginning of 2021.
Wow.
We hope.
John.
You are a lady.
You have giant ambition, but you also have incredible vision and are very good at spotting a need.
Thank you.
So congratulations.
We like to make it happen, for sure. And I'm really lucky that I have an incredible staff. I have an incredible couple of coaches who are developing strength and conditioning programs for para that people are anxious to know about, and team management styles that are compassionate and mindful, that I think can be used in any rowing club around the world. We have a board that's engaged and interested, and I like to just come up with things and see who wants to come along. Really, just come on, let's play,
Fantastic. Tara, any last things that you'd like to mention?
I just want to encourage everybody to keep on keeping on. And if you need any kind of support, just reach out to us. I'm getting emails daily from people saying, hey, do you know anybody who's going out in sweep boats who could give us some guidance? We're feeling really nervous and we don't want to do it. When did I become someone you would email about sweep boats? Like, that's great. So now I get to ask you, Rebecca, or anybody who's watching or listening, and just say, hey, anybody have any advice about getting back out in sweep boats? But I think everybody should just keep on keeping on and take a breath. This is the time to really savor being healthy and not push too fast. There's a difference. At the beginning of this, there was a difference told to me that's really stuck with me. There's a difference between personal health and public health. And I think we want to keep that in mind. That's our mantra at Seize the Oar, is to keep that in mind. While we may personally want to go row, when we think about the greater picture, it may not be the best thing.
Yeah.
There are so many other things we could do. We have weekly Zoom workouts. We have bingo games. We have the 31 Days of Inclusion Challenge. If anybody wants that, let me know. It's on our website. So there's plenty to do. There is plenty of books to read and things to do and to support your community. But we'd love to help you if you need it. Reach out.
So tell people where they can connect with you.
Yeah, so my email is Coach Tara, or T-A-R-A, as you can see on the screen, Coach Tara at seizetheoar.com. And you can see that it's S-E-I-Z-E. It's a commonly misspelled word. And I wanted to tell you a funny story about that. Was I started Seize the Oar because the name, Seize the Oar was founded in 2013, but it wasn't named that until about a year later. And it was because I had a company called Come On, and I've been naming Come On, Adaptive Rowing Program, Carpe Diem. I thought, oh, well, what's oar? Right? Carpe Remigium was the original Latin name, which turns out years later is wrong. But as we started to put the name out, one of our rowers actually emailed me and goes, hey, by the way, you're spelling C's wrong. Like, and we had for weeks. She's like, that's not how you spell it. I'm like, I'll never forget that. Thanks, Yvonne. Love you. It's great.
So I before E, except after C.
But I'm a big speller. I love good spelling.
And this is E before I, after S.
Here we are.
Carpe Rima. Actually, Carpe Rimum. Right. That was corrected about 3 years ago.
Who speaks Latin?
It was actually a newsletter editor who brought it to my attention, who's an academic and had studied Latin. And she goes, you realize that's not Seize the Oar, right? And I was like, oh. I had all these stickers and printed and logos and, you know. Well, you live, you learn. You know, you just got to be flexible and adaptive, right? You got to just work with it. So we figured it out. No harm, no foul.
Confess your errors and set yourself straight.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was really good to talk to you.
Tara, your energy is amazing. It's very, very infectious. And I seriously hope that as a result of this, that more people get to go to the Inclusive Coaching Conference, and that when you are ready with the adaptive certification, please come back and let's do a little showcase.
Yes, this has been great. And we're just wonderful to expand our community. So we'd love to meet everybody in September.
Thank you, Tara Morgan from Seize the Oar. And this has been Rowing Chat with me, Rebecca Caro. Till next time, bye-bye.